Hey team, welcome to a super quick little session on iReady student groupings, instructional groupings as they call it in iReady. The intent of this information is really just to show you a couple of the different ways that iReady as a platform can help you make the most of your data and see how it compares to your knowledge of your kids and your groups as they exist in your RTI structures or small group instruction. Okay, so you've got your beginning of year results, and now it is time to take a look at basically how they turned out. So from my iReady homepage, we go to Diagnostic Results, Analyze Performance. Let's take a look at math. Sure. And so I'm going to take a look at, specifically, I want to know about my 8th graders here at B2 Middle. Shout out, thank you, Ms. Cummings, for the use of your desk right now. You see the background, and it's familiar, that's why. So in placement summary, this is helpful information. We can see how basically all students assessed did by homeroom. But if I go to view all students, now I can start to sort by one of 4 domains and by their overall placement and scaled score. So it's automatically sorted by the top scaled score, meaning Jordan over here is actually your top performer in 8th grade. So if I were to change this to take a look for my kids who need the most support, right? So I just selected red and then the deep red. So 2 grades below grade level, and then kids who are 3 or more grade levels below as a conglomerate of all 4 of these domains put together. Now, in order to take student groupings and make the most of them from what I know to be true about kids, I could go in student by student and say, okay, well, I know that David and John and Jeremy are all working on number sense. Or I could sort and filter by essentially lowest to highest reverse scaled score in a certain domain. So for instance, if I'm looking for kiddos who need the most support in numbers and operations, I would click right here on NO for numbers and operations. Same would be true for algebraic thinking, measurements and statistics, and geometry. So you've got your 4 domains here. And from here, I could take a look and see, okay, it looks like Everton, Jeremy, Axel, they're in like a similar range. Those 3, we've got a similar range of Armanio, Angel, and Saraya, and Haley, and Levi. This group gets really big in the 450s. And so you kind of take a look at maybe some of our bubble kids. Let's take a look at the second group. So starting with Angel, I would click on Angel and go student by student and say, okay, so compared to algebraic thinking, looks like numbers and operations is slightly better, but it's not as good as his measurement and data. It's also around the same performance as geometry. Taking a look at what that looks like for numbers and operations specifically, on the left is everything that Angel has already demonstrated that Angel can do. So Angel does not need a small group lesson on place value, right? On just any kind of digits, multiplying a whole number by a power of 10 or a multiple of 10, that's huge. So being able to do that is a great foundation for Angel to hit these next skills under base 10 operations. So subtracting, multiplying, taking a look at rounding and comparing and ordering decimals through hundreds is basically a list in order of how they could show up for Angel in my path, but also just in a logical order of how to use these resources in instruction. So thinking about subtracting multi-digit numbers, if you were to click on any one of these next step skills. You could click on these PDFs for an actual lesson plan or lesson plan materials. Some are more fleshed out than others. Now, I can see that I'm looking for other kiddos who also need subtracting multi-digit numbers as a small group topic. And so I would go back and see, all right, so do this again. And sort. Great. Here's Angel. Let me look at Soraya. Does Soraya, whose score is really close, also need that same kind of work? I would take a look at Soraya's overall kind of performance picture. Looks like a 445 in numbers and operations. That feels, oh, subtracting multi-digit numbers is Soraya's first next step as well. So again, big key point when you're grouping kids like individually based on what they can do and they're working on next up, the biggest thing is really just to make it very precise what the objective is for their time together and not waste any time with what they've already demonstrated. Of course, excavating prior knowledge in order to access this new skill for them, but hopefully that's just, a really targeted, precise moment in time and not anything that you would need to spend a ton of time going through. If you were to use the reports that iReady has already created for you, you would go up to reports and you would go to instructional groupings right here. Grouping students with similar instructional priorities and finding resources to support personalized learning or differentiated instruction. So knowing that, I'm going to stick with the same group, knowing that 24 students, 25 students, even 13 students, right? Like that is not a small group. These are helpful insofar as it's going to tell you grouping 1 are your 24 students who need the most support. Grouping 2 is your next level of most support. Looks like here grouping 3 would be somewhere, in the middle. Grouping 4 are higher performing kids, and grouping 5 is your highest performing group of kids. So an extension activity for, these 13 kiddos in small group, delightful. In the meantime, we're going to focus in on grouping 1. And so iReady has already done the heavy lifting here of basically excavating the students by what they need to work on. So you'll notice here that unlike the report that we pulled and how we filtered it down by what the students were working on in a certain domain, it looks like, okay, Kimberly, for example, well, she's really only a grade level behind total, right? But when it comes to what she's working on, she probably has a lot more in common with Axel, who's performing overall at a second grade level. And that seems counterintuitive, but let's look at what Kimberly's up to. Yeah, it's because fundamentally her numbers and operations are low. And so even though she's early, she's right where she's supposed to be with algebra and algebraic thinking. Imagine what she could do, right, if she had those basic fundamental skills. And so when you look at numbers and operations, getting that down, right, being able to multiply and divide multi-digit decimals using distributive property, which is probably going to come back to DEMDAS and everything that comes with order of operations, is going to just catapult Kimberly into the next level. And so, believe it or not, if I just close this out, Kimberly might be working on the same thing that Nevaeh is. So if I go into numbers and operations for Nevaeh, who is that much further behind, Nevaeh has really similar next steps as well. So it seems like they could both benefit from each other. And so if I wanted to print Nevaeh's individual report, I'd go up to PDF, and then I would select the ones, the criteria here that help students know basically what they are working on. So let's say we really just want to show them what they're working on. I would select Can Do and Next Steps for Instruction, and some resources. This is always a cool report to send home, and also to go through if you're conferencing with students and doing data chats. So basically, the can do and next steps summarized for a student. You can also do a batch reporting. In that same little window, it popped up and asked me. So view all groupings. Again, you can look for your own logistics. You can group by homeroom, by, in this case, it would be like math class, perhaps by RTI group, and go from there. The biggest advice I can give you is when in doubt, come back to the data. Look at your student work, like what can you prove and what is conjecture, because being able to precisely pinpoint the gap between where they are and what they've already been able to show you they can do is a way better way to spend your small group time, and make the most of the adults in the room. So thank you so much. Again, you can always reach out